Hello everyone. After a long break, again I am making videos on the topic of geography. This time I am making a little bit different that I am making chapter wise video. First I am starting with the chapter resource and development, which is the 10th standard first chapter for CBSE board. This chapter starting with the definition of the resource. Today I am discussing the definitions and uh, more on I will discuss in my next videos. The first is the definition of the resource, that everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible and culturally acceptable. This can be termed as the resource. That means whatever is provided in our nature, that all the things are resource, but until or unless we are using it. So the resource is considered in the human perspective. Suppose coal is a resource that if it is having its utility a lot on for human use, that is why coal resource. If it doesn't have any utility or uses, that is not resource to human being. The same way many things are present in the nature, what we do not access, we do not know how to use those resources. Okay, so that's why they are not resource. May they have much more potentiality than coal or iron, but as we don't know that how to use the technological know-how, that's why they are not considered as resource. So resource is calculated, resource is conceptualized on the basis of human utility. The first line of the definition is everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs. Signifies this: the whatever available in our nature must satisfy the human needs, then only it can be considered a resource. Secondly, it is provided, obviously it is provided by nature, and it is technologically accessible and economically feasible. Suppose a log of wood we are cutting from the tree, then we are making the furniture out of it through an institution, that is the sawmill. So when we are cutting a piece of log or wood that directly is not so useful, we have to process it for fuel, for making furnitures, or for making paper, or any other purposes. So there must be an application of technological know-how. That is why it is written it should be technologically accessible. The second point. The third point, economically feasible. How much feasible a resource is, how much cheap a resource is, that much and more utilization we can see of that resource. Because the cheapest thing, especially in our India with this much of human populations, we need the resources at cheaper rate. The costlier and costliest resources can access a few human beings or a class of human beings only. But if the resource is cheap and accessible to everyone, so that the huge population can access it, so the economically feasible it should be. A resource should be economically feasible and then culturally acceptable. See, you can consider only our India. We are having so much culture in different provinces. So the resource should be like this, that should not harm anyone's culture or ritual or anything. Many examples are there in our India, that what is a resource to one cultural tribes, that is not a resource to another cultural type. And the different people from different province use the same thing in different way, so it not should harm anybody's culture, that is expected. That is the general concept of a resource. So in the definition of resource, it is a 4-line definition, but there are some criteria. The first, what you can remember, that is provided. That means provided by nature. The second one is this, that it should be technologically accessible. That means in nature, whatever we get directly in the raw form, that we cannot use every time. We have to process it, and the process is technological know-how. That is why written it is technologically accessible. Then economically feasible, how much cheaper the resource would be, that much accessibility or popularity it will gain. And the last one is culturally acceptable. It is expected that a resource is usable to everyone, not to a particular community or a particular province. That is why it is termed as resource. That is the ideal definition of resource. And as I told you from very beginning, that the resource is considered in the human perspective. Resource or any natural hazards, there are so many tsunamis and so many forest fire is going every day in many of the corner of the world, but that all that are not a natural calamity or hazards until or unless it is having a negative impact on human being, on human society. So whether it is a resource or it is a natural calamity, everything will be considered in the perspective of human society. This is the explanation for the definition of resource. Next day, we will continue with the classification of resources. Okay, bye-bye.